George Kilpatrick Inspiration for the Nation, celebrating people we feel good about. How many of you have had a Black teacher in your life? More importantly, how many of you have ever had a Black male teacher in your life, going from K through 12? Well, you hit the jackpot tonight, ladies and gentlemen, because we have three brothers who are Black men in STEM. They're math teachers at Frazer K-8. And we're pleased to be joined by JaQuez Gilliard, Curtis Patterson III, and Isaiah Gregory, all here today to talk about their journey, not only to being teachers and Black male teachers, but also Black men in STEM. And they're all at the same school. So how did that happen, right? So take your pick. JaQuez, I'm gonna begin with you. First of all, welcome to Inspiration for the Nation. Tell me about your journey to math education. Where did you go to undergrad? Where you from? And how did you get in this math game?
Okay, well, thanks for having me, George. Actually, I'm from South Carolina. I was born and raised in Utahville, South Carolina, and my journey actually started in high school with my ninth grade Algebra 1 teacher. Her name was Bessie H. Bird. She would always pull me to the front of the class to teach the problem to the students because she saw something in me that I didn't even know existed. And a lot of times she would say, "You got this, I know you can do this, and I want you to do well." And well, she retired that year, but after she left, she will always call back to speak to my next, math teachers who I went through. And then she kept calling me because she wanted me to go to Claflin University to major in education. And so she was able to help me receive a scholarship called the Call Me Mr. program, where they helped pay for my tuition so that I could excel as a teacher in the state of South Carolina. And here I am today.
And typically people are intimidated by math. We'll get to that in a moment, but you weren't, obviously.
No, because I really enjoyed it. And it's probably because I had really good math teachers in high school that made a big difference for me. So it made me really enjoy doing it. So I'll say, well, why not get involved? So
All right, Curtis, what about your journey? Where you from and how'd you get to be a Black man in STEM?
Yes, sir. Well, I'm from South Carolina as well, small town called Ridgeland. Um, and very similar to JaQuez, I pretty much excelled in my math classes. It wasn't a subject that I like really liked or loved, but it was just something I was good at. Never really had a problem with. When I went to Claflin for undergrad, I knew that I wanted to become a teacher. I bounced around between elementary education, middle level education, and math education. And pretty much after bouncing around between those two majors and doing some field experience, I kind of figured out that the middle school and the like fifth grade kind of realm, when it came to math and ELA, that's where I felt like that's where my heart was. So I went back to middle level education. My focuses ended up being mathematics first and then ELA second. And then I just stuck it out from there. Like I kind of fell in love with the fifth grade and sixth grade curriculum for the most part.
And now to the hometown boy, Isaiah, talk to me.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. So born and raised here in Syracuse, went to all Syracuse City School District schools, graduated from Corcoran High School, then I ended up going to SUNY Cortland. The irony of it is my undergrad was not in education. My undergrad was actually in sport management. Mm-hmm. So, living life for some years and trying to get into that field and not working out the way I wanted it to. My wife actually pushed me to, use something that I've always been good at. And I've always been good in math. That was always my favorite subject. But she kind of pushed me to say, hey, look, you're not happy with the jobs you're doing. You didn't, you haven't found what you were looking for. So you need to try getting into the teaching field because it's something I've always done. I've always been a mentor to a lot of kids in the city. So, I kind of just jumped at the opportunity. I tried it, started out as a substitute and in the math field as a substitute math teacher. And it's kind of just grown since then. And that's how I got into it.
I mean, the fact that you're all in one building, I just think that's amazing, but also the rarity of Black male teachers speak to that. You gotta start with you, Isaiah.
Yeah, I can count on half of a hand how many Black teachers that I've actually had that were and that were male. So as a whole, Black women or Black males. Ironically, in middle school, one of my math teachers was a Black male, but he was like one of 3 Black teachers that I've ever had. So, seeing him do it seeing him come to work every day in a suit, it was inspirational because we didn't see that. It wasn't the norm. It just didn't happen. My favorite teacher of all time that I've ever had in school is not a black male. It's not a male. It's a white woman. So I mean, that's just what we were used to. It's what we've seen growing up, especially up here in the North. So it just wasn't the norm.
What about both of you from South Carolina?
I'll go first because I feel like JaQuez can add a little bit more to what I'm going to say afterwards. But for me, I grew up in the South. I think for my schools, a lot of the teachers were predominantly Black women, which I enjoyed. They were very nurturing, and then they helped me to get to where I am in my life. When it came to Black men in the schools, primarily you'd only see them in administrative roles or roles that dealt with discipline in some kind of way. So I never really had the chance to establish those relationships with those Black males because I never had to be disciplined. I never really had a lot of those problems until I got to high school. My first Black male teacher was like my band director, and he was like a father to us. And then going to college, I was not in Call Me Mister. However, I would always hear how we want to beat that 2% statistic that there's only 2% of Black male educators in the United States. And I think JaQuez can add a little bit more to that as well.
Yes, I agree with both of you. But I think one of the big reasons is because teaching always seemed to be like a female job. And especially in the South, most guys look at it as, I'm not doing that because I'm too masculine for that position. But they don't understand how important it is to our culture, especially to our young boys, because if you don't see that, then you think that, okay, I can't do that. That's not for me. Most of the time, all the male teachers we saw were either coaches, or they were doing something else like Curtis said in the school. But it's very important that we get in there because our boys need us. Like, there's no other way that we can actually allow them to think about becoming teachers until they see themselves. And that's why it's important for us to get there.
Yeah, talking about that was JaQuez Gilliard. We have Curtis Patterson, Isaiah Gregory, all teachers at Frazer K-8 School here in the Syracuse City School District, all Black men, all math teachers here. And I still think that that's a rare thing. That's why I wanted to bring y'all on, because I want to normalize it, right? I want people to be able to hear and see that it's possible. And so talk to me about math literacy, because that is a challenge for our kids, for kids in general. And so what are your tips, strategies to get our young people to be better math literate and not to give up? Because math, as you know, is something that once you stop doing it, then you lose it. But yet, how do we keep the young people practicing it? Is it the way it's being delivered? And I want to focus on you, JaQuez, because you have a little Mr. Math person on YouTube or something like that. You created some sort of character or something, right? To reach people in a different way. But folded in that, each of you take your shot at how we reach our young people to keep them math literate, and what are the ways we can do that? So start with you, JaQuez.
Well, first, I think it's very important that in order to keep them math literate, you need to make sure you provide the content that's relevant to them. Sometimes we try to teach kids stuff that has nothing to do with them or their culture, and they don't want nothing to do with that. So it's just like me being from the South. I grew up next to a cotton field. I wouldn't be talking to them about cotton and picking cotton in the barrels because they don't understand that. But something that's more relatable to them would be like to talk about the snowfall, the inches, different things like that. That's more relevant to them. And they were like, okay, maybe I can, get a feel for it. But the literacy part is very important because it's all problem solving, and that math can translate to your real world situation. It's all about knowing how to take a problem, understand it, digest it, and solve it. And so that's why it's important that we make sure that we make it relevant to them so that they can stay interested, and you keep sparking those interests in them and you will succeed.
What's your character called on YouTube? You got a little math person.
I call him Mr. G. So my YouTube channel is Basic Math Skills with Mr. G.
Yeah. And what can people get from that channel?
Well, so right now I'm in the process of building it. So what I want to do is just build just basic math skills from anywhere from 4th grade up until 9th grade, just so that kids can get an understanding from whatever it is that they may be working on in class. I hope to do multiplication facts, fractions, anything that I know that my kids are suffering with right now. I want to be able to provide content for that as well.
Curtis, what about you? The importance of math literacy and getting our young people to not want to disassociate, because a lot of times we don't look, as a student in math who had to take geometry more than once. So talk to me about getting us to not run from it.
Yeah. So like pretty much what JaQuez said, we have to make it applicable to the kids that we teach. We just can't put a basic math problem in front of them, because a lot of times they just focus on the computation of it and truly don't understand what's going on in the problem. We have to just really just sit down and break apart and like JaQuez said, just digest exactly what's going on in the math that we're doing these days. And also we can build our literacy. We have access to so much these days, like, JaQuez with his YouTube channel, everything is on, you can look up everything on YouTube these days. But of course the kids, if it's not important to them, of course they're not going to look it up. I think it just starts in our communities, whether it's the communities that we teach in, the communities that we live in, the communities that we just have our conversations that kids are around. We can just also express how important education is, even though I know a lot of us do it and it may become redundant, but just showing them in different ways, or even if we can find ways in our normal conversations to show how math is related, because math is everything. Math is time, math is numbers. We have math in ELA, we have math in science. So I think creating those connections for kids, especially when you find out that they have other favorite subjects, because we all know math is not the favorite subject of the majority of students, even adults.
Majority, right.
Yeah, majority. So if we can find a way to relate it and show that, yeah, you need to know how to do this in order to do that, or you do this in this subject, bring it over to math, and then hopefully something will start to click in them and then they'll see the importance of it.
But do you feel, Isaiah, that because you got a curriculum and a syllabus and you have to follow to get them to pass the 4th grade and the 8th grade, whatever it is, whatever it's called. What's it called?
New York State test.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't know if it had a special name. To get them to pass the 4th and 8th grade test. So does that limit your creativity in terms of getting our kids to succeed and to excel, because you're limited? You got to teach this way on this plan, and there's no room to meet them where they're at to make it relatable. Is that a challenge? And you may also pick up on anything that didn't come up with what Curtis and JaQuez were saying.
Sometimes it can be a challenge, but like you mentioned the word creativity. I mean, we can literally put anything together. We have to be creative with any type, especially with math. I think that's the joys of being a math teacher, is that I can make any number anything I want it to be. Mm-hmm. I can make it mean anything I want it to mean. And if you want to get technical and go into what JaQuez teaches, getting into the idea of algebra, we do a lot of things with unknowns. So you have variables, and you have, why is there an X? Why is there a T? Why is there a V? Well, they can be whatever we want them to be. So we can be as creative as we want, as long as we apply what's in the curriculum. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what, made math so cool for me as a kid. Was I noticed right away, I loved sports as a kid. I noticed right away, if I'm looking at Michael Jordan's stats, I'm doing math.
Right.
So, with these kids now, it's all about LeBron. It's all about Steph Curry. It's all about whomever they love in sports. They love Patrick Mahomes. They love Lamar Jackson. Well, look up their passing yards. Look up their rushing yards. See how many times they threw the ball. Then you can figure out what their average was. So all those type of things you can apply to anything with math. So, sports, music, the things that we know that our kids love, the same thing that, we love growing up, they love the same things. We just have to apply it in a way that they're going to enjoy it too.
I should also ask, it's just not math. So you all teach different things. Isaiah, what do you teach in math?
So I teach 7th and 8th grade math.
Right. So does that, and what about you? Same thing, Curtis?
I teach 5th grade math.
5th grade math. And JaQuez?
I'm only doing 8th grade right now.
Only 8th grade. So that algebra is in 8th grade now? Is that how it works?
Yeah, we have a little bit of algebra in it, but we have a separate subject for algebra as well. So my kids get a little bit of the algebra, but not a lot of it. So
yeah. So how do we make that was Isaiah, Gregory, Curtis, Patterson, JaQuez Gilliard. So how do we make how do we support parents who might find it hard to help their kids with the homework? Like, I know, and look, consider myself literate, but thank God I'm married to a math teacher. So when, when they came home with all that math and geometry, and um, I had a lot of support at home. But what about for families that may not have that kind of support? What do they do to help their kids?
Well, we always encourage them to reach out to us first, let us be that person to help them out. But we always, now that we're in a digital world, we
Right.
always recommend, YouTube. You can go on YouTube, like Mr. Patterson said earlier, and learn a lot of things. Sometimes we need to refresh. We pull a couple of YouTube videos to refresh, help us out.
Y'all laughing for real, huh?
Yeah, seriously.
Very.
And Khan Academy is free. So you can
Right.
sign up and learn as many skills as you need. They have videos and built-in quizzes to help those kids, succeed when they need it. So there are a lot of different resources out there, including the teachers that the parents can utilize to help help their children.
Yeah.
You all mentioned that I think it was Curtis, you mentioned how people avoid math, or it's hard for many of us. And so how do we then nurture math excellence in our youth? And I think you talked about making it more relevant, using things that they're familiar with,
Mhm.
but it was nurtured in you somehow, aside from Isaiah, who came at it later, but the two of you had it nurtured in you from whether it was a teacher. Because here's what I'm thinking. A lot of times, maybe this is my perception, I haven't been in the classroom like that, but I'm thinking that people tend to shy away from it, and then they feel like they can't do it, and then they get so far behind, and then they can't catch up. And so I'm just thinking, how do we help these young people? How do we help these parents get the support that they need? Yeah, I can go on YouTube, but how do we nurture that math excellence so that, we can be scholars? We are, because a lot of scholars already. I'm not pretending that there isn't, but sometimes kids make fun of other kids when they're smart in math and other subjects, right? Y'all all agreeing with me with that, right?
Right.
So how do you counteract that sort of stuff and nurture math excellence as it was nurtured in you, Curtis?
So for me specifically, if you come into my classroom from day one, I always tell my kids that nobody's perfect. Like, I have that speech at least once a week. Nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes. As it's their job as students to correct my mistakes, because I'm going to make them, and I make them a lot. And then as a teacher, it's my job to correct your mistakes. So I do a lot of whole group where we're going through a bunch of examples together, questioning students, calling them either randomly or, calling them volunteers. And my biggest pet peeve is when kids don't try. Like, you can tell they're thinking something, but they just won't say it. And of course, they're just afraid to be wrong. They don't want to get something wrong, I guess, so they'll be seen as a failure. But I just keep expressing that. Like, in math, you have to make mistakes. It's the same thing as science, is trial and error. If you do not make that mistake, you don't have that room to grow. So I think once you keep like hammering that in kids and showing them that when they do make mistakes, you're not like, I used to have some teachers who was like just jumping down my throat every time I make a small mistake in math. And I kind of vowed that I wouldn't do that to my students. I would make them understand, like, yeah, you made a mistake, but this is how you correct that, because you can always come back from it. So I think just being nurturing in that sense, especially, I think it might be different. I know it's different for some of my students to see it coming from a Black male, especially, like you said, all of us in one building. But I just make sure I stick on that, because I want them to know that they can be successful. And I see in some of them that they're already giving up in 5th grade. And I can't have that.
Nah, because they got to get to Isaiah and JaQuez. What, either of you have JaQuez or Curtis or Isaiah want to say anything more about that?
Yeah, I'm gonna second Curtis. One of the things I say in my class, I mean, once again, I'm a math teacher, I'm not an ELA teacher, so this is not the best sentence, but the kids understand it. I usually tell them, I can't grade no effort.
Okay.
So if you don't show effort in math, at least in my classroom, it's gonna lead to situations where, number one, your paycheck is your report card. So you're not gonna show and tell, first off, that you're even applying yourself or trying. The other part of it is that same conversation goes into everything else that we do. So if I have a kid who's really, really good in sports and they're in my math class and they don't try math, if you go to practice and you don't practice hard, you're not going to do well. You're not going to get better. So it's literally practice. So, the way I try to nurture it with my scholars is, The other way is math is everything and everywhere. So when you tell the time, it's math. When you put gas in your car, it's math. When you want to go to the corner store with $2 and you want to spend your whole $2, it's math. So everything we do, every step we take, we can count them. Everything we do in life is math. If you got 4 buttons on your shirt and you undo one of them, you only got 3 buttons. Like, it's literally stuff that we do every day is we're counting. We're just counting. Everything we do all day is counting. So math applies to our everyday life. So there's no need to run from it. It's going to be
what, you know what I'm laughing about though? I just thought of my late mother, and she was good with the numbers. Okay.
Yeah. My grandmother is the same way.
You understand? She knew how to, you know what? She could put those numbers together in her head. She could do that. You understand?
Something as simple as remembering a phone number. My grandmother still remembers old phone numbers from when I was a kid, still from when she was a kid.
Right. But when you said numbers, it just made me think of my mother. She was putting them numbers in. Trust. So, how important is it that you all have one another?
I'll start. It's very important because we get discouraged. You know, sometimes, like when I first started here, me and Curtis started at the same time, but I had the pleasure of working with Gregory because, first of all, when I came here, I wasn't expecting it to be another Black math teacher other than Curtis and myself. But when I heard that they hired him, I was excited because I felt like I had somebody that understood or will understand what I'm going through. Even though we come from different walks in life, we still are Black men. All right, we still have to fight the Black men struggle. So just having him to lean on as a support, him giving me encouragement, I'm giving him encouragement. It was a win-win for all of us, you know. And a lot of times we would get together with Patterson. It was the same thing there. So just knowing that you had somebody else that's going through that struggle, it was enough to get you through. So I really appreciate working with these brothers. I really do.
Yeah, Curtis, you wanted to say?
Yeah, I'm gonna say same for me. Just coming in first year, like it was overwhelming. I know JaQuez had some experience working in schools before he came up here, and Isaiah did too. But that was my first year, just like teaching, and then coming to an urban district, it was a bit of a culture shock. So just having those two to, like you said, just have that time to vent, or if I was missing something in the curriculum, if I just wasn't understanding the math, I could just go talk to them real quick, and they can get me back right. So I definitely appreciate it. And I know my first year, me and Gregory pretty much worked in the same classroom until I went down to 5th grade. So just having him, just to have somebody in the classroom who understands, like you don't even have to say nothing, you can just give him that look and understands the same thing you understand. Like there's nothing like that.
Complete the sentence. Well, there's 2 things. One, I'm thinking of 2 things. One, reaching kids in the digital age. You know, what is the advantage of us being in the digital age and how can that help with math literacy? So answer that question first, and then I'll have one final question.
I'll answer it somewhat as best as I can. So I can honestly say it's been a struggle. Virtually with math, at least, it's a bit of a struggle. These brothers right here, they're hands-on a lot like myself. So the ability to look at a student's work and touch the paper, it doesn't seem like it's a big deal, but just to be able to touch that paper and say, listen, move this decimal point here, move this decimal point here. It's a lot different than me showing you on the screen or on my whiteboard behind me on my teacher wall in my house. It's a different feel. So that part of it has been a learning process, but I think what's pretty cool is, being that we are a close-knit group, we bounce ideas off of each other. So that part of it has actually made it better that we're virtual because we work together so well and we bounce the ideas off each other to try to get the kids to be more engaged. But I think that's really one of the hardest part is keeping them engaged virtually. Incentives, trying to be, sometimes what I'll do is I'll start during my regular class when we were all in person, I'll play a little bit of music to start the class.
What you playing? What's on the playlist?
Oh, it ranges. So I do it, but I mean, I'm a Stevie guy. I'm a Stevie Wonder fan. So I usually try to play something mellow when the kids are coming into class. But I also, give kids incentives to where, hey, listen, you got 100 on the quiz. Well, you pick the playlist. It's going to be edited, but I'll just whatever the case may be.
Right. It's going to be the radio edit. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'll go about it that way sometimes, but just to keep the kids engaged. And now I'm doing that virtually also. Play some stuff in the background for them while they're, coming into class first 5 minutes while I'm doing attendance. And that's been helping, it keeps the kids engaged a bit,
Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to answer that?
Well, I also found that this year, serving as the 8th grade demo teacher, it was easier for me, like when I'm teaching, to record the lesson. And for those kids who don't like to get on Teams, or who don't show up for whatever reason, they have access to that video. They can actually see what I taught, that they can get caught up. So having that resource is a lot easier for us as a teacher, because when the kid miss a day from school, you have to go back and reteach them. But just having that ability to record yourself, you can say, okay, make sure you go check this video out later.
Right.
That's where the parents got to come in and make sure they do it. So right.
Well, let me. My final thought to you is, what do you want to say to parents? What do you want to say to the community about the efforts that you're undertaking to make sure that our kids are ready and prepared? What encouragement can you give us to, first of all, seeing you all and hearing you all is encouragement for me. So I just wanted to honor that. But also, what can you say to our parents to give them some help, hope and support to our community, that there are some things that we got to do to make sure our kids are ready and prepared, because in the global economy, if they're not prepared, they're not going to be able to have their dreams. They're not going to be able to be as great contributors as we expect them to be. So what are you expecting from our scholars, our young scholars in our community? How can we support them? One at a time. Let me start with Isaiah.
Yes. I think one of the things that I would want, it sounds kind of cliche, but anything's possible. So you as a parent, I have deficiencies. You know what I'm saying? So as a parent, there's things I'm not good at. There's things that I am good at. But I know for a fact that, things that I'm good at, I can feed into my children. Things I'm not that good at, I'm going to find a way to feed them and feed at it. So I want to make sure that the parents understand that we are the outlet. And on top of it being that we're the outlet just as their math teachers, we're young Black math teachers. We're young Black male math teachers for a lot of these young Black male students.
That's right.
And we're an outlet for way more than just the math portion. If we could be an outlet for just their mental, their physical, whatever the case may be, these kids want to work out, they need to get busy, they need to move around. If they need to talk emotionally, mentally, whatever the case may be, we're an outlet for all things. The math is going to come if we have that relationship. And I think that's the advantage that we have as young Black male teachers, especially as young Black male math teachers, is that we relate to these young Black male students as well as everyone else. But these young Black male students who, we see struggling and we see their parents struggling with them, we can be that outlet, not just as a math teacher, but as a mentor. So we can apply, we can be applied in many different facets, not just the math portion. The math part of it is the plus.
Well, I'm gonna just translate what you said. I'm here for your kids outside of this math curriculum. That's what I heard you say.
Sure.
Right? Making loans. Not even making loans to a show, but you basically, that's what you said. I'm here for your kids outside of math. Use me in that way.
Exactly.
Curtis, what you want to say?
I wholeheartedly agree. Like the first thing I want to say is that I don't think that some parents truly understand that some of their teachers, I'm only gonna speak for myself and these two guys on the call with me as well, is that I know for a fact that I love my students. And there's a lot of students I will go to hell and back for. There's a lot of students I would give the shirt off my back for. And I just want parents to understand that, like you said, like Isaiah said, we're here to be used. We're here, to pour something into your children. Yes, we got hired for math, but majority of the conversations I have with my students out, like in the classroom, don't revolve around math. It's about stuff they're doing in their lives, stuff that's happening to their families, to their pets, anything that could be going on in their lives that they deem that's important, because most of the time it's not math. I just want parents and just the community to know that anytime that you feel like you're failing as a parent when it comes to like your child's academics, we're here to help. Like there's no reason to feel shameful about that. There's no reason to be sad about that, because you can always come to your teacher. I'm only speaking for myself. you can always come to me because I am here to help. Like, I don't even, like, of course, that's what I get paid for, but after hours, before school hours, it does not matter because I love my kids. And that's the most important thing. I want to see them progress, because the reality of it is a lot of our kids in this district are not where they should be, or not where a lot of people expect them to be. And just coming up here, I know I want to make change. And I don't know if I'm going to stay in Syracuse for the rest of my life. I don't know if I'm gonna go back to the South, but I know that I want to make my time here worthwhile.
Amen. I appreciate that. And like you said, it begins with the expectations. We have to raise the expectations of what we expect of our kids. JaQuez, you may have the last word.
All right, and I would say to the parents, just please be patient with the kids and be supportive, and understand that they may not be a straight A student, but that doesn't matter, because straight A people are not the only ones who help change the world. But I want them to understand that even if your child made a 65, if they work really hard and earn that 65, then guess what? They did what they were supposed to do. And even if they go back the next semester and they end up making a 68, any growth is good growth. So we have to encourage these kids, because sometimes they feel like, well, I have not gotten that A, so I'm not good, I'm not worthy enough. But guess what? You did what you could do, and that's all you can do is the best that you can do. So just continue to encourage them and love them no matter what. And as you do that, they will continue to succeed, and they will continue to try harder, and their grades will improve. So thank you for just being a great parent, and just continue to uplift your children as we will in the classroom.
JaQuez Gilliard, K-8, Frazer Middle School. I'm going to say Fraser Middle School, just a Frazer K-8, Curtis Patterson III, and Isaiah Gregory, all math teachers, Black men in STEM here at the Syracuse City School District, Fraser Middle School. Thank you both. Thank you all. You all are truly inspiration for the nation.